Hello and welcome to another episode of Soul Nectar Show, that show where we talk about all things essence, where we gather around the campfire and we share our stories of connection to that which is bigger than us, to the great mystery beyond the veil, the divine, the synchronistic journey, the breadcrumbs. And it's delightful to hear other people's stories because it brings us home to our own stories. Isn't it fun to share how the divine shows up for us? And if you're new to this experience and it's not totally showing up for you yet, it will. Just keep listening, just keep engaging, just keep opening. And if you want a conversation around that, check out my website, kerrihummingbird.com, Kerri hummingbird.com, and book a 15-minute chat and we'll have a talk about it. So I always love having these conversations. Today, my guest is ZofiaRennea. She is just awesomeness. She's a global strategist and former biophysicist. She had it all: a high-powered career, loving husband, properties, adventure, and friends, until her fast-paced life screeched to a halt. Brought to the edge of death, Zofia was left bankrupt in every area of her life. And I know that some of you out there listening, you understand this moment very intimately. We're going to hear a little bit more about that. And I want to tell you also that Zofia is the host of Sovereign Self, which is a podcast that I've been on. So I'll put a link to her podcast into that episode in the show notes. So exciting. We've had very good discussions already. And she is the creator of the Conscious Enlightenment Process. She's a spiritual teacher showing others that life often wraps the best gifts in the shittiest wrapping paper. And so join us for a discussion. Zofia, I'm so excited that you're here with us.
I'm so excited to be here. This is so much fun. This is one of my sweet zones.
Yeah, after all that hell, it's so much fun to have these heavenly conversations, isn't it?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, there's this meme that goes around on Facebook periodically, and it shows this woman. She's sitting in this idyllic meadow, and she's in her lotus position, meditating, and this rapturous look on her face. And it says, "This is what people think enlightenment looks like." And then the clip underneath it is this woman who's in a straight jacket, and her hair is like, 10 days in bed, and she's kind of screaming, "I am losing my mind."
Yeah, exactly. That's the whole point. You need to lose your mind so you can find your heart.
And it's like, yeah, that is so totally what the waking up into enlightenment experience is like. Everything changes. Nothing is the way that you thought it was. And yeah, nobody else seems to see it in your immediate circle either. And so you're left in this space that it's like, I'm being taken apart and melted down into this other form that I didn't even know was a possibility. And every day when I think the process is over, there's just a whole nother phase to it. But the good news is eventually you get through that, and you do get to that like lotus position moment from time to time.
Yeah, that is part of the experience. I mean, otherwise it would be just too.
Otherwise it would be, why would you want to do this?
Why? Yeah, no one would go along. So, everything came crashing down for you. I know that I totally understand that part. Everything just seems like it all falls apart, and all the things you thought you worked for, bam.
It was like this slow moving train wreck. I kind of refer to myself as like the reverse Job, if you know the story from the Bible, where they take everything away from Job to see if he's going to lose his faith. My process in reverse, they took everything away to see if I could find some, because I was working from this really 2 + 2 = 4 rational mind. I'm from Missouri, you better show me the proof kind of situation. And I'm a stubborn Norwegian. I was raised by a Norwegian and a German, so I get a double dose of stubborn and stoic. So I literally needed the metaphorical 2x4 upside the head to get me to think that, there might be a different way to approach this. And so at my lowest point, and it was like this slow moving train wreck over the course of a couple of years, my husband had lost his job, been unemployed for a long time. We got a transfer out to Arizona to a new job that we thought, oh, well, this is going to be the bomb. It was supposed to be 3 to 5 years. And so, like, every last penny that we had still, we had invested into this move out to Arizona that was going to save us. And he lost that job. No, I'm going to rephrase that. He did not lose that job. They lied to him
Mm.
because they told him they had 3 to 5 years in this great big budget and all this kind of stuff. And the reality is they once had that money, but they had blown it all. And so they only had salary for him for a year. And he was supposed to create some kind of a miracle for them with this money.
Wow.
And that is not how that played out. So we're in Arizona. We spent every last penny to get out there. We haven't been able to recover significantly over the course of the year because I've been too sick to work. And so we're in this point where it's like, well, bankruptcy is what's left. I mean, it's not that we've ever been bad about managing our money, but zero income in is a really hard thing to stretch to get the ends to meet. So we ended up declaring bankruptcy. And I know now, looking back, that all of this was completely soul guided. And it's like, you're going to go down this path right here. Because it looked always in our circumstances like there was no exit. Okay. And the directions that we were pulled in, it's like, well, that shouldn't be possible. But my husband and I had this conversation. It's like, well, what do you need? Because his industry is shifting and the jobs that he was getting in the past are getting harder to find. So what do you need to be able to go out there in the marketplace and compete and get the things that you want? And it came down to an advanced degree in medicine, law, or business. And none of those are cheap degrees if you've ever looked at this kind of
Yeah, those all
secondary
cost a lot of
education.
money, like $100,000.
Yeah, and we're in bankruptcy, but this is what we're going to go do right now. And I talked with a bankruptcy lawyer and we looked at what we did actually have left because we did have some retirement money that was protected. And he was able to put together a plan on how we could leverage that money into my husband's education without the trustee having rights to grab it. Because the problem is once you reach in, the trustee is like, oh, no, no, that's mine.
Yeah, I
So
know
he
that.
he came up with a plan on that. And it's like, oh, bless you. You are fabulous. Excuse me. And so it's like, okay, fine, we're registering you for school. And now that money's not going to go all the way through this education, but it'll get him started. And fine, I'm good with getting him started. Let's go. So we got that. And we needed a very special form of bankruptcy to continue to protect that little bit of retirement nest egg that we had. And in order to have that, you have to have income. And I can't work at this point because whatever is happening with me, and I didn't know what it was at the time, was eating my brain.
Hmm.
I I was talking to my mom and she's like, you have more health problems than I have. And she was like 76 at that time. And it's like, okay, there's definitely something wrong with me, but nobody can tell me what it is. So there's this mystery out here, but I know for a fact I'm not employable because I can't remember what I'm doing. I can't tell you what you need to know. Literally, that function is going away and it makes you pretty darn unemployable. So it wasn't an option for me to get a job. But my husband had volunteered to help out a friend of his at one of these professional conference things. And it happened to be held that year in the city we just moved from. So he knew people and he called friends he knew in the area, go out to lunch, catch up, that kind of thing. And one of his buddies over lunch, he filled him in on what was going on. When we went into bankruptcy, we decided we were not going to hide the fact that this is what's happening. And so we agreed that we would talk about it freely to anybody, who was interested. And so he shared everything that was going on with his friend over lunch. And his buddy was like, I always wanted to partner with you on a business. So here's what I'm going to do. So he gave us exactly the amount of money we needed to get the bankruptcy structure that we needed. Uh, and they started their business venture together back in the city we came from. Now, we've got a house in Arizona that we'd like not to lose to the trustee. So for a while, we ended up living in both places and no idea how we would ever live together under the same roof, nor did we have any idea where he was going to stay in this other city. We can't hardly pay for the house we've got, let alone someplace for him to stay. But, what the heck, we'll take a flyer on it. When I was working, I was in outside sales. So I've got a long list of email addresses for people back in this city. So if you were in this city, you got an email from me that basically said, I'm in a difficult spot. My husband has an opportunity that's 1,200 miles away from where we actually live. And what we're looking for is a guest room, a shelf in the refrigerator, an internet connection, a place for him to park his car, and a cat-free environment because he's deathly allergic to cats. And I sent out this email to probably 200 folks. And there were a lot of crickets. There were a few, no, I'm sorry, my cousins, brothers, uncles, whatever, just moved into our guest room. And then I got something I was not expecting at all. A neighbor of mine contacted me and she says, I have an empty condominium. It's furnished. I cannot rent it out because it's in a 55 plus community and that's forbidden. But I need somebody who can live in it and watch over it for me. If you
So
pay the
perfect.
utilities, it's yours. I'm like,
I love how those things happen when you're on the
I know.
phone.
It's like, oh my God.
That's just what
Now,
I needed. I
yeah,
scratch your itch, she
exactly.
scratches mine.
And I'd have never thought to ask for that. Um, and so we moved him in there. And I'm getting sicker and sicker and sicker. And finally, we get to the point in the bankruptcy where we can actually be together. And it's important for me to be where he's at because the health insurance that comes through this company is only good in that state. And so I can't get any treatment in Arizona. So I talked to my dad and got a U-Haul and moved what little we have left. I got rid of a great deal of stuff. There was a lot of stuff releasing in this process.
Yeah, that's part of
And
that purging process of bankruptcy.
yes,
A lot of
exactly.
stuff.
So we moved into this little tiny retirement condo. And I actually found the doctor that diagnosed what's wrong with me after I moved in, which is like, oh, hallelujah. I have a name for what's happening to me, and it's chronic Lyme. And Lyme disease is a relative of syphilis. And if you know anything about syphilis that's allowed to just continue unchecked, it eventually eats your brain because it can
Wow.
cross that blood-brain barrier. And this is the stage that I had reached with this thing. And the doctor was encouraging and not encouraging. He came with this really thick, like 2-year plan for how you get better. And all right, had a lot of like IV antibiotics and clearing IVs and like expensive stuff in it. And it runs for 2 years. And he has, I think he said like an 80% success rate with it. And it's like, okay, 80% is pretty good, but there's this little part in the back of my mind that goes, I don't have good luck on medical statistics. I've come down on the wrong side of better statistics than this. So there's this part of me that's like, oh God, I really, really super hope this works. And we contacted the insurance company to find out how much of this plan they would cover. And they said, we don't believe in chronic Lyme disease. You get 60 days of oral antibiotics, and that's it.
Wow.
I'm like, oh my goodness. And we had put a pencil to what, was the list price of like doing all this stuff that the doctor had said to do. And it was like $24,000 for the first year.
Wow, yeah, I know Lyme disease is a tricky thing to treat.
Yeah, exactly. And so, excuse me, I've gotten all this news, and as I'm getting off, it gets better, right? As I'm getting off the phone with the insurance company, I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, can this get any worse? Which is an object lesson about the questions you ask.
Be careful
Because
what questions you ask, because those are the ones that are going to get answered.
exactly.
And the answer
And
is always, well, sure, whatever you want.
oh, let me show you how this can get worse. And the lady on the phone says, oh, and you should know your doctor's no longer in network.
Oh my goodness sakes.
And so it's like, oh, that's all it needed, right? And I'm like, what am I going to do? I can't get a job. He's already got a full-time job. He's going to full-time graduate school, and he's taking care of me. He's got zero bandwidth to do anything else. He needs more sleep. He doesn't need more stuff to do. So I don't have a way to like earn this money. So the only thing I could think to do at this point is to call my dad. I'm like, is there any way you can help me with this? Because if I can get through this, if I can kick this thing, I can go back to earning and we can repay you. And the bank of dad was empty.
I've had that happen too.
Yeah,
When the bank of dad is empty, that's a hard moment for a
that's a
daughter.
very,
That's a very
very
hard moment for a
hard
daughter.
moment. And so I went to bed that night and I'm laying next to my husband. And I'm not sleeping at this stage. This is how badly my brain has deteriorated. I cannot sleep. The best I can do is a little bit of meditation, and that kind of sustains me enough to get through, but I'm not getting rest. I literally lay there all night, not sleeping. And it's a very frustrating space to be. And at this point, my poor ravaged brain is like this trapped squirrel, and it keeps going around to the different options, and it's all walls and rocks and no place to go. And I finally said, God, I will do anything to get better. Now, this is a watershed moment because I have not spoken to God since I was in high school.
Yeah, and usually that starts to clear things up pretty quickly when you make that call.
Yeah, exactly. And I said, I will do anything to get
Oh,
better. And
anything you want,
this
I promise.
this this little voice in the back of my head comes and says, really, anything? And
Oh goodness.
I spent a moment with that, because it's like,
Because
yeah,
you have to really be honest with that
yeah,
answer
do
because
I
you will be
really
called
mean
up.
anything? And I thought about it and I said, well, I'm talking to God. He's not going to ask me to hurt someone or become an axe murderer or cheat people. So yeah,
I mean,
I
what's the worst that could happen is ask you to take
exactly.
care of
I'm
yourself,
down with anything
ask you to love
because
yourself, ask you to, be kind, take
yeah,
care of it.
exactly.
No
Okay,
problem with that.
I'm down with that. And I got my first miracle because I fell asleep.
Ah, what a relief.
And I woke up in the morning and it was very clear to me that even though I had no idea how to pay for it, I had to go get one of these clearing IVs. So I did that. And while I was at the doctor's office in the infusion room, he doesn't usually come in there, but he walked through the room. And so I took the opportunity to tell him what was going on with the insurance company and to ask him, what are my alternatives? Because, this is going to have to be a self-pay thing, and ain't no way we've got $24,000 because of the bankruptcy situation. And he says, well, if insurance is completely out of the picture, we have this naturopath herbalist who's part of the team who does an amazing job with parasitic infections, which Lyme is a parasitic infection. So you might want to consider having a consult with him because he's like less than half the price that I am. Like, all right, I'll try that. And so I set an appointment with him before I left the office. And as I'm going through the next couple of weeks, getting to my appointment and doing all this, some strange stuff starts to happen. And I'm putting all of it down to, well, it's my brain because it's not functioning the way it's supposed to. So it's something with the brain. And I had the appointment with the herbalist. And as I'm sitting in the waiting room, there's this book that says emotion code on it. And I'm like, oh, well, I've never known what the heck to do with my emotions. I've been to counseling, I've done all this stuff, but like the emotions never seem to heal or evolve. They're always as fresh as they always were. So yeah, let's crack this open. And so I got through like a little bit of the preface, and then the owner of the book came back for it. I'm like, oh my God, now I have to buy this book. And I did. And this book was about, you know, taking down your heart wall and getting rid of your stuff and the ancestral stuff. And so I know for a fact I have a heart wall because I've seen it, I've interacted with it, you know, and if my husband is like one of the few people who's ever been invited in behind that wall. So I'm like, well, yeah, let's get rid of this sucker. So I'm very deliberately taking it down, you know, 10 emotions at a time. And the more emotions I pull out of that, the weirder the experiences in my life are becoming. And like I go into Walmart, and I'm a people watcher. So I'll look at people and go, I wonder why they're doing that. I wonder why they made that choice. And I'm getting answers.
Like
I'm
psychically.
literally, they're literally showing me, well, they had this conflict 2 weeks ago and this is their compromise sort of answers. I'm like, wow, okay, maybe I need to be a little more careful what I wonder about because I'm getting all this information that
Right.
I shouldn't have.
Yeah, you can get a lot of information. And by the way, for everybody out there, I have a friend who's worked on my heart wall. So this heart wall stuff, this is for reals.
This
This
is,
emotion code heart wall stuff, oh yeah, this is for
yeah.
real.
And it's, the input is starting to become overwhelming. So I'm trying to figure out, you know, how do I filter out some of this because it becomes too much. It's like being in a really loud stadium. And so I'm trying to sort some of this out, and come to find out as I'm going back to this herbalist for subsequent appointments, uh, his son who works with him, who runs his clearing electronics and this kind of stuff, is a medical intuitive. And so they gave me someone I could talk to about what's happening with me. I'm like, here's what's going on. And he's like, you're not losing it. It's okay. Try this. This will help you some, right? He's giving me these little tips and pointers as I'm going along. But there's this part of my brain that's still going, mm-mm, no, no, no. I'm a muggle. This shit does not happen to me. I'm a muggle. No, I'm not a mystic. I'm not magical. I
The
am a muggle.
resistance to the
Yes,
old
the
identity,
scientific
surging
brain
back
is
up and
in
saying, wait a
there.
second, this is
Yep,
woo-woo,
going,
and I don't do
no.
woo-woo.
Here's your alternate explanations for all of this. And so I'm writing off everything that's happening, all of the visions, everything that's happening. And I finally come home from the grocery store, and my neighbors are trying to get into the house. She's staggering under his weight. He's clearly in a shit ton of pain. And so screw the ice cream. And we go and we get him in the house. She says, I have to go call the kidney doctor. We need an emergency appointment. It's gotten so bad. And so I'm standing in the living room with him. And I'm like, can I help make you comfortable? He's like, you know, there's no comfortable place to be. Let's just stand here. And so I'm holding his hands, and he's got his eyes closed, and you can see his lips are moving. And I know them to be very devout people. So there's no doubt in my mind that he is praying. And I'm staring at him, which seems like this terrible personal intrusion at this moment. So, okay, I'm going to close my eyes and give him some privacy. And when I close my eyes, I see in my mind's eye this little tiny flame. It's like a pilot light that's on the edge of going out. It's doing that flicker dance thing before it goes poof. And I'm given this knowing that that's his life force, and he's literally on the edge right now of leaving. And I haven't acknowledged who I'm talking to. It's been a couple of weeks since I talked to God, and before that, it was decades. And so I just thought to myself, is there something we can do about that? Now, why I had the idea that I would ever be involved in doing something about that, I can't answer, but that's the question I asked. And in that moment, he dropped my hands and my eyes shot open. He says, are you a healer? And I'm looking around to see who the hell he's talking to, because after that question, there was the flame got like really bright in my vision, like completely eclipsed my vision. And I was fortunately saved from answering by his wife returning and saying that they had an appointment, they had to leave right now. So we hustle them out to the car, wave them off, and I go hide in my house for about 3 days while I convince myself that nothing has happened. Nothing has happened, and I am being a bad neighbor because I have not gone over to check on him. And so I finally went next door and I tap on the door, knock, 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 knock. And she answers the door. Oh, I'm so happy to see you. Jay has so many questions. I'm like, oh no, because I've got no answers, right? And so I walk into the living room and there he is. He's in his favorite recliner and he's got his book and he's got his drink and he's got his remote, looking fat and happy. And I said, how you doing? It's the strangest thing. By the time we got to the doctor's office, I was feeling pretty good. And they put me through the usual battery of tests. And would you know, I had normal kidney results. I haven't had normal kidney results in decades. I'm like,
That's wow.
wow, isn't that something, right? And now he's asking me all these questions I have no answers for. I'm like, no idea. I have no answers for you. But that was the moment where the scientist had to sit down and shut the fuck up. Because
I love that you said that.
I can't explain that away,
Yeah.
right? He's got documented kidney failure, which the medical community will tell you is irreversible, and that normal kidney results for him are impossible. And yet, he's back to perfect, radiant health.
That's beautiful. I love that story. Gorgeous. So what happened? Did that apply to your Lyme then? Did you apply that to your Lyme condition?
I I was not able to apply that to my Lyme condition,
We
but
can't do it for
fortunately,
ourselves, don't you? Doesn't that just really bother
well,
us?
you have to be able to
Dang it.
accept, you have to be able to accept the miracle in your life. And I was not at the point that I could accept for myself that I would just magically be better. But I was at the point that I could magically accept that I would gradually get better. And so I
Yeah, I get
spent
you there.
3 months with the herbalist and the Lyme was gone, which
Oh,
beats
that's
the heck
great.
out of a
Yeah,
2 year
3 months.
protocol.
Yeah, so accepting the miracle, that is a really profound point. There's actually a quote, I can't remember who, I've been looking at all these quotes online because I'm finishing my new book, which will be out by the time this is released.
Oh, lovely.
But I'm putting all these quotes in there of suggestions and help and things like that from wise women mothers. And one quote I saw, and I can't remember whose quote it is, was saying that magic is actually from the mind, like your thinking mind thinks about magic, but miracles are from God.
Mm-hmm.
That was an interesting
Absolutely.
distinction for me.
Yeah, and I've noticed that in my spiritual development because I explored magic as one thing that perhaps I was supposed to, and I kind of dipped my fingers in and went, no, that's not it. And the difference that I see between miracles and magic is one is your personal will and the other is divine will. And I'm
Absolutely.
here for divine will. So
Yeah, divine will. Divine will is what happens when you surrender control.
exactly. And magic is the taking of control. So yeah.
Yeah, and the sort of, so like this, you know, a lot of the stuff we do around the law of attraction is sort of like that magic making stuff. But the miracle is like what happens when you ask and you say, what do you want of me? You know, like,
Yeah, how should
how
I
can I
how
serve?
do I serve today?
And you say,
Exactly.
how do I serve today? Now I want to serve this way and this way and this way. But like,
Exactly.
how do you want me to serve today? What's on the agenda
Yeah,
for today? You know, what
tell
do you
me
want me
what
to
I'm
do?
supposed to be doing. And that was one of the things, early on when you wake up, I know for myself, and I've seen it with a lot of other people, there's this urgency. There's this, I have a mission I need to be getting on with.
I have
Like you don't,
totally felt that. And I know a lot of
yeah,
people
but
in the
you don't know
audience
what
have.
the fuck it is,
You're
right?
like, what is the mission? But I know I need to do it. I'm going to get busy doing what?
Yeah, I need to
Give me
be,
some direction.
and so what I finally decided to do was treat it more like a GPS than an itinerary, and just, what is it I'm supposed to do today? What is the one thing I can do to move my mission forward today? And whatever it is, I go do it. And most of the time it seems really silly and mundane. It's like, go to the bookstore. Okay. And you get to the bookstore, it's like, am I here to find a book? Nope. Am I here for a rock? Nope.
What the heck am I doing here?
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, and somebody will come over and make some comment to me, and there's a reason I'm supposed to be there. There it is.
And I
Found it.
found that it's often like your life's experiences. Like it's often the things that are happening in your life, like the experiences that we go through are the way. So like the bankruptcy led you through this process where you actually relinquished a lot of control, right? Over
Yeah,
your outcome and then your
I
health challenge at the
relinqu
same time.
exactly. I relinquished a shit ton of control, and I was also learning how to what I call run at walls, because we would get these signs. It's like, here's where you're supposed to go. With like my husband's education, he needs another degree. Here's where you're supposed to go. It, and on its face, it should not be possible, but you just keep going that direction, and the wall turns out to be an illusion, or there's a sharp left turn, and there you go. You end up at this end that you would have never expected to be
Because
at.
at the beginning it looks like a wall. I love that analogy. That's beautiful.
Yeah,
So isn't that
and
like kind of what we're doing right now overall?
right now as a society, we're sort of running at walls, right? Because I mean, if you think about what it takes to keep people safe from a really super contagious pathogen like what we have going on, and you think about doing things like shutting yourself in your house and having no human exposure, does terrible things to the economy, takes a lot of jobs away from people, and we're literally running at walls to try to save people's lives. Um, and at the same time, it looks like you would be causing more harm than you're causing good on its face. It's a really interesting economic and health conundrum. And I think it also shows us a lot of things about how things are currently set up. Because one of the things I've learned as I go through this process with everyone is just precisely how privileged I actually am.
Yeah,
Be,
even without the job and without the big house and without, it's a privilege to be in this country. It's a
mhm.
privilege to be in a body on the planet anywhere.
Yeah,
It's a privilege to be alive
exactly.
and having the human experience.
It's even more of a privilege to have the option to choose to stay home, because not everyone has that option. There are many people out there who literally won't have a home if they choose to stay home.
Yeah, we talked about
Yeah.
that a little bit before we started getting into the show, which is that in Austin there's a surging homeless population because people have
Hmm.
just gotten to the end of that rope where it's like, okay, I can't sustain this crazy rent you want me to pay with no income.
Yeah,
And I'm at the end of my
exactly.
rope. I can't do that anymore. So I'm going to be homeless now. And then going into that space of like, well, what does that look like? And a lot of people are playing with like, well, that looks like me in an RV, or this looks like me in my van, or that looks like me in my car, or that looks like me in a tent because I can't afford the car anymore. It looks like me
Yeah.
under the freeway pass. This looks like me in a national park. So what does it look like? We're really at the edge of the old model. It's not sustainable to have of 1% of the population control more than 50% of the income
Yeah.
and to have everybody else struggling to make
As,
ends meet
as wage slaves
as wage
is
slaves. Yeah.
basically what it is. Yeah.
People are no longer willing to sacrifice their sovereignty in order to get a little tiny, slice of wage while
Well,
others are living
or to work
extravagantly.
themselves into the grave with 4 jobs just to be able to make rent.
just be able to pay for an astronomical price for rent or a house or something like that.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
and it's not
and
really sustainable either.
yeah, well, and we don't, most of us don't have sovereignty over the things we quote unquote own even, right? Because so many of us have car payments, we have house payments, we have these things that leave us tied to the thing, but the thing is not tied to us. And so if you're unable to make the payments, it goes away.
Yeah, that's the whole model, right? I mean, you have
Yeah.
your mortgage and you own your house, but how many people actually own that house?
Yeah.
Because you got to pay the mortgage on it, and that's 30 years or whatever. You got to make all the payments every single month for 30 whole years, and then you own the house.
Yes,
But then if
exactly
you don't
right.
pay the property taxes on it,
They will take that
they'll
back
take
too.
it,
But
take that.
that's an easier reach though.
Yeah. So there, you're kind of in the system. Once you're in, you're in. You got to navigate. And when I navigated my way through it, I'm just not a very compliant person. I've just never been very compliant. So, more like a renegade. So I became
Yeah,
an
the system
entrepreneur.
hates that.
They don't like it, but I could not stand it. I literally, it
Yeah.
was soul deadening for me to be
Hmm.
an employee, work all those long hours under fluorescent lights, stifled for,
Yeah.
for creativity and growth. And
I
I
spent
can't do
every
it.
day of my working life going, are we there yet? How much longer to retirement? Are we
That's why
there
there's hump
yet?
day, because you can't
Yeah.
make it through the whole week to the weekend and still stay sane. You got to have hump day in order to have a celebration like midweek. Yeah, I made it like 2 whole days.
I'm halfway.
I'm halfway through this terrible week, and I just dealing with my mundane life and these irritating annoyances that's just not. I did that lifestyle, and
Yeah,
it was not fulfilling. I had to have
exactly.
more. I actually couldn't. It was too painful for me to tolerate it. So
Yeah, my husband and I, we're unemployable at this point. We have to be
not employable.
self-employed. No one else would have us.
Got to do my own thing. Now, the flip side of that is an entrepreneur, and this is actually one of the beautiful things I think about the change to the schooling system that we've had, because like in our school district, for example, our kids we were given the option for our kids. They can either go back to be in person and take the risk that there's going to be some exposure to COVID and it could spread, right?
Right.
Or work from home and do the virtual thing. Well, because our kids go back and forth between here and their mom's house, we're like, let's just do the virtual thing. It makes it easier for us, because then if we're
Yeah.
out of the country, they can be with their mom, and then the grandparents can chip in. They could be at any house and
Yeah,
still
and
be in school.
still school just goes on as it
So you have
needs
more
to.
freedom. Actually, you could take a freaking family road trip, and they could be in
Yeah,
school. Like, so
exactly. They can be in the back seat, reading assignments or whatever, and then you get there and it's like, hey, let's sightsee.
yeah, as long as they have an internet connection, they can be in
Yeah.
class. So that's what I love about it. And I think it's teaching them to be life entrepreneurs. And I think that's where the whole model is switching from like, go to work, turn your brain off and just get through it and celebrate on Wednesday with a margarita, and then Friday, like get drunk all weekend, to like, what do I want for myself?
Mhm.
And then how does this model even sustain itself? And one of the things we talked about was even like housing, like all the basic structures are changing. What do you see for that?
Well, I've dabbled in real estate. I've worked in lending and that kind of thing over the years, and I thought I was kind of done with that until recently. I've been looking for a project to help keep my father, who's in the early stages of dementia, active and engaged in doing the things he enjoys. And he was in the trades all of his life, and his hobby was like rebuilding performance motors for boat racing. So he's very much a three-dimensional engineering problem solving kind of guy. So I'm trying to figure out what can I do with him in Arizona, because I don't have garage space to, rebuild a car or something with him. And but I do have the tools and the know-how to fix and improve real estate. And so that kind of flitted through my mind, and I went, that's impractical. And then my guides keep bringing me like acreage. Oh, look, here's this beautiful piece of acreage. And look, it's right off of a paved road. Look, it has utilities on it already. And I'm like, I don't know quite how I'm doing this, but
Why are you showing this to me?
they keep showing me like this great big Norwegian lodge house, okay, which is like your community center, and then like these micro homes around it. And they keep bringing me acreage. And so I'm curiously stepping into where I'm supposed to go with this. But uh, earlier in my development, I had this daily practice of show me the next thing I'm supposed to do, the next thing I'm supposed to do. And I'd released the expectation of ever knowing like what the end point is. And I'd done a retreat with a friend of mine, which culminated from the, well, you should call this person direction that morning. And she needed a place in Costa Rica to hold a retreat because the partner she'd been working with had screwed up some of the details and they lost their location. And I don't know why, but I'm like, yeah, sure, I can find you a place in Costa Rica. I don't know anybody in Costa Rica, but I knew that I could get her a good place
Well,
for
you're
this.
connected to thought leaders at this point, so yeah.
Yeah, well, I wasn't at that point. I mean, that she was one of the few people that knew I'd gone through this. It was her and the medical intuitive and my husband who knew at this point that I'd gone through an awakening. I mean, I was not out of the spiritual closet at that moment or really particularly connected. But I found her a place in Costa Rica, and the partnership that she had dissolved. And she's like, well, do you just want to be part of the partnership? I'm like, I don't know anything about yoga. She's like, no, but you know how to read cards, and you know how to channel healing, and I think we could put something together that would be really agreeable. So we did a retreat together. And while we were in this retreat in Costa Rica, I had this vision one morning, and I'm floating on the side of a pool and looking out, and I know that there is an event coming, and I know that I'm surrounded by a bunch of other amazing healers, and this is my quiet connected moment before the day of healing and growth and transformation starts. And I'm also given the knowing that this isn't someplace that's rented. It's like, this is where we abide and do our work. And so I think it's all kind of tied together. And so I'm just kind of curiously stepping in to see, well, okay, where does this show up and how does this come together?
I love
Yeah.
that. And I think a lot of people that I've talked to, other thought leaders, have had similar visions, of community.
Yeah.
Because like you said, like it gets old having to do all the meals for your family, like every single day, right? All
Yeah.
the meals. So like wouldn't it be easier if we collaborated back into tribe, back into community, and had like our own little micro houses and then like cook
And
dinners together,
you've
meals
got your
together, and then,
communal garden, and you've got a couple of goats and chickens, and you've got,
grow our own food.
and you've got combined locations for things like retreats and classes and healing sessions and meditation paths and through the woods. And yeah, it's there, that sort of combined, we're all pulling it together effort and
Yeah.
community, I think, is a beautiful inspired thing. I haven't got it all worked out how money works or how any of the ownership or whatever would happen, but if you are lit up and inspired by this, reach out to me and we'll just see how all of these pieces come together.
Yeah, I love that you just said it that way too, because we're just following the next step and the next step and the next step, and none of us knows how it's all going to work out. So we just have to keep going for like what you said, those walls, and then
Yep.
this looks like a wall, but actually it's an invitation. Maybe it's a doorway instead of a wall. It looks like a wall
Yeah.
because the door is closed, but then you open
It's
the
an
door and you're
invisible
like, oh,
door.
there's a door there. I didn't know
It's
there was a
those
door.
doors that look like bookcases, right?
It's a secret door. Oh. And then we find a whole new way of living. And I think that's, for me, that's the process we're in right now, is like, like for you, I also went through the bankruptcy thing. And so before I went through that, as a person in my brain, I was like, oh, that's the worst thing that could ever happen.
Yeah, looking
No, it's
back, it
not.
was an answer to prayer
It's a prayer
because
answered,
we were so in debt and
it
upside
was
down
so uncomfortable
properties.
and
And
upside down.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And it's
Because
like,
when you make
oh,
the switch, when you
yeah,
flip from the material living guided by your personality into soul living, it's like everything, all the fabric of everything has to shift, including the money. So
Yes.
it all has to flip over. And so you almost, I don't really know anybody that has had a spiritual awakening that hasn't had the money problem thing too, hasn't had a bankruptcy or something go wrong with the money. I don't personally, there probably is somebody out there, but I don't
There,
know them.
there, there may be, but yeah,
It's a
typically the money
common part of it.
does get disrupted. I think it's one of the main ways that our soul gets our attention, frankly.
It's to
Yeah,
redirect like what's your source, because when you're living in the personality driven world, you think your source is the money and other
yeah,
people that can give
or
it to
the
you.
employer
You know,
or the
the people that
job,
can give
right?
you the money,
Yeah,
right? Like, so you're like, that's my source, this person right here, this company right here, this bank right here, that's my source, or my parents or my dad or my, and then in this process, like, no,
no,
there's one source, it's not any of that. And
yeah,
you got to get
and
realigned, and sometimes you get realigned, you got to get the financial smackdown.
exactly. Well, and I know
It's uncomfortable.
one of the shifts that we also need to make, and I'm guilty of this, so don't think that I'm I'm better than anybody else, is this idea that you have to own it. You don't have to own it. You
Yeah,
just
the
need
indigenous people
permission
know
to
that we
use
don't own
it.
anything.
You just need permission to use it. I had a gentleman who wanted to start an air charter service, and he was telling me it was going to take him, X many years to raise the however many $1 million he was going to need to get his fleet of jets. And I'm like, you're a pilot, right? Yeah. You know people who own airplanes, right? Yeah. Lots of them, right? Yeah. Scattered all over the country in hangars. Yeah. Do you think they would give you permission to fly this poor medically endangered child and their parents to a medical appointment? Yeah, they probably would. Like, hello,
Yeah, that's
you've
where we
got your
work
fleet of
together.
planes. You've got your fleet of planes.
Working together,
Yeah,
we can do it. That's right, because he
exactly.
has the mission. The person that owns a plane wants to support that mission, doesn't want to go do it themselves, but they're like, hey, I'm
Right.
helping out in a different way, but cool, like, yeah, you can use my
And
plane.
how often do they use the plane, right? It's sitting in
Probably not
there
all
in
the
the hangar.
time,
It's
just
not
sitting.
good for them to just sit. They do need to run occasionally, like any mechanical vehicle. And so they can get a charitable deduction for the gas and the pilot time and whatever, there you go.
So this is a really good insight into how we step into seeing what's available and seeing who wants to collaborate and seeing who wants to be part of a project. And we start thinking in terms of tribe instead of just your one little insular family or just yourself.
Or organization or cause or whatever it
Whatever,
is.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's teamwork.
Yeah,
Beautiful. I love that.
exactly.
So
Yeah.
I love that. So well, we already know about your podcast, Sovereign Self.
Yes.
What else do you want to tell people about how you work with them? And I know
Ah,
you're offering a free 20-minute virtual coffee chat.
yes,
What
exactly. And
else do you want to tell people?
that's usually where we discuss how I can best serve you.
Ah,
I do a lot of different things. I've got a shit ton of tools in my toolbox because I am that like expansive, eternal learner kind of person. So I no longer like go down my list of modalities because it's like endless.
yeah, because you're
uh,
just constantly on the learning path.
exactly. But the bottom line is I fix broken lives. If your life has fallen apart, if you've got some, what I want to say, life destroying asteroid, hurtling at you. And I've had clients who've arrived in this place. It's like this lawsuit that will end my life as I know it. Um, yeah, I'm your girl.
Awesome.
I,
Well,
I do that kind of stuff one on one. If you're in like your awakening path, I also have a weekly. I'm calling them now Sacred Living Labs. And so every Tuesday evening at 6 p.m. Eastern, we get together and we practice listening to our soul and following our internal guidance and developing the different gifts that come along with that. Some people are resistant to the labels of the clairs, claircognizant, clair whatever. Some people like those labels. Doesn't matter to me. Doesn't matter if you're brand new. Doesn't matter if you're just looking to level up or expand or refine what you're doing. We get together and we sit circle and we all learn from each other and we have experiences. of following our souls together.
That's exciting. I love the way you describe
Yeah.
that too, because to me it also feels very communal and, you know, collective guiding.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for
Yes.
sharing your story and your insights and your journey.
Yes. And if you'd like a chat with me to get involved in either of those directions, you can go to bookzofiacoffeechat.com. So it's BOOKZOFIA coffeechat.com.
Awesome. I love that you have a URL for that. So I will put that URL in the show notes as well, so you can go find it there. And thank
Beautiful.
you everybody for tuning in this long. And you know I'm going to ask you for my favor before I give you kisses. And that is, if you found this broadcast useful to you and inspiring and encouraging and empowering, or if you know somebody who's going through Lyme, for example, or who's going through a bankruptcy or has something going on like that that seems traumatic that we talk about in this episode, share this episode out with them. Just say, hey, I was listening to this and I thought you might get some value from it. Just, it doesn't have to be a big like deal, but you can
Yeah.
just offer it and just be like, hey, I hope you found some value from this, and share it out. We really appreciate you doing that. And then if you like and subscribe and leave a comment, those things tell the machine that, hey, this stuff's good, so if
Show
you
it to other people.
if you could do that for us, that'd be great. Thank you so much for contributing in that way. And we're going to give you kisses. So would you like to join me in giving a one kiss
Oh,
and
I
signing
would
out?
love to join you in giving them kisses.
Energetic kisses coming your way, people. We
Yes.
love you so much. And we'll see you next time on Soul Nectar Show. Here's your kisses.
Mwah.
Beautiful. Have a wonderful week. Bye for
Thanks.
now, everybody.